The day the invaders learned, Earth doesn't fall, it fights back. The morning sky over New York City burned crimson as massive shadows blotted out the sun. Commander Sarah Chen pressed her face against the Pentagon's reinforced windows, watching in horror as vessels the size of Manhattan descended through Earth's atmosphere. The alien ships moved with impossible grace, their dark hulls shimmering with energy fields that made the air itself ripple. How many? General Morrison's voice cracked behind her. 17 confirmed over major population centers, Lieutenant Rodriguez replied, his hands trembling as he read from multiple screens. London, Tokyo, Moscow, Beijing, Los Angeles, Sydney. They're everywhere, sir. The Kethvar had arrived without warning. No radio signals, no attempts at communication, no demands for surrender. Their first message came in the form of devastating energy beams that carved through military installations like hot knives through butter. Within minutes, every major Air Force base on 3 continents had been reduced to smoking craters. Sarah watched as sleek fighter craft poured from the motherships like angry wasps. They moved in perfect formation, their weapon systems already charging with an ominous blue glow. The few human jets that managed to scramble were destroyed before they could even lock onto targets. The alien technology was centuries ahead of anything Earth possessed. "Sir, we're receiving surrender demands," Communications Officer Park announced, his voice barely a whisper. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies in perfect English, Mandarin, Spanish, Arabic, and dozens of other languages." General Morrison's jaw tightened. What do they want? Complete planetary submission within 72 hours. All military forces to stand down. All governments to dissolve. All humans to report to designated processing centers for relocation. Park swallowed hard. They're calling it the integration protocol. The room fell silent except for the distant rumble of explosions echoing across the Capitol. Through the windows, Sarah could see the Washington Monument's tip glowing cherry red from a near miss. The aliens weren't just making demands, they were demonstrating their overwhelming power. Processing centers, Sarah muttered, her military mind already understanding the implications. They're not here to coexist. They're here to replace us. A massive explosion rocked the building as an alien beam weapon struck the nearby naval yard. The lights flickered and emergency systems kicked in with harsh red illumination. On the main screen, satellite feeds showed similar scenes of destruction across the globe. The Eiffel Tower toppled in slow motion. The Sydney Opera House vanished in a flash of superheated plasma. Humanity's greatest achievements were being erased in real time. "Orders, sir?" Rodriguez asked, though they all knew the military hierarchy was collapsing by the minute. General Morrison stood straighter, his weathered face hardening with resolve. "Send word to all remaining units. We don't surrender. We don't process. We fight." "Sir, with respect, we can't win this," Park protested. "Their technology is beyond anything we can handle." "Maybe," Morrison replied, moving to the communications console. "But they made one critical mistake." "What's that, sir?" "They came to Earth expecting us to roll over like every other species they've conquered. They don't understand humans." He activated the emergency broadcast system. "This is General Morrison, acting commander of all remaining Earth forces. All units, all personnel, all citizens, hear this. We are not defeated. We are not processing. We are going underground, and we are going to make these invaders regret the day they decided to pick a fight with humanity." Outside, the alien fighters swept low over the city, their weapons reducing entire blocks to rubble. But Sarah noticed something that gave her hope. The Kethvar were being methodical, almost leisurely in their destruction. They were treating Earth like a conquered world, not a battlefield. That overconfidence would be their downfall. "Ma'am," Rodriguez called out urgently, "we're getting reports from across the globe. Military units are going dark, but not because they're destroyed. They're following Morrison's lead, disappearing into underground facilities, mountain bases, abandoned subway systems." Sarah smiled grimly. The aliens had superior technology, but they didn't understand human psychology. Throughout history, every conqueror who underestimated humanity's stubborn refusal to stay conquered had learned a painful lesson. The Romans couldn't hold Britain forever. Napoleon's empire crumbled. The Third Reich fell despite their advanced weapons. Now it was the Kethvar's turn to learn. The building shook again as another energy beam struck nearby. Through the smoke and chaos, Sarah could see alien ground troops beginning to deploy. Tall, insectoid creatures in powered armor that glowed with the same blue energy as their ships. They moved with mechanical precision, securing key positions and setting up communication arrays. "Time to go," Morrison announced. "Activation Protocol 7. Everyone to the deep bunkers." As they gathered their essential equipment and prepared to evacuate, Sarah took one last look at the burning city. The Kethvar had won the opening battle decisively. Their technology was superior, their tactics flawless, their victory seemingly inevitable. But they had made one fatal error in their calculations. They had studied human governments, human militaries, human technologies. What they hadn't studied was the human spirit, the same stubborn defiance that had driven mankind to climb the highest mountains, cross the deepest oceans, and reach for the stars themselves. The aliens thought they were conquering a planet. They had no idea they had just picked a fight with 7 billion individually stubborn, collectively dangerous, evolutionarily refined survivors who had spent their entire species' history learning how to fight impossible odds and win. As the elevator descended into the Pentagon's deepest levels, Sarah could hear Morrison already coordinating with resistance cells worldwide. The real war was just beginning. The Kethvar had taken Earth's cities and military bases, but they were about to discover that humanity's greatest weapon had never been their technology. It was their absolute refusal to give up. The day the invaders learned Earth doesn't fall, it fights back 3 weeks after the initial invasion. Dr. Elena Vasquez crawled through the abandoned subway tunnels beneath Madrid, her backpack heavy with salvaged electronics and medical supplies. The underground had become humanity's new world, a vast network of caves, sewers, basements, and forgotten spaces that the Kethvar hadn't bothered to map. Above her, the sound of alien patrol drones hummed through the concrete. The invaders had established their processing centers in major stadiums and convention halls, herding captured humans like cattle. But they were learning that humans could be remarkably slippery prey. "Doc, you need to see this," whispered Marcus, a former communications engineer who now served as one of Madrid's resistance scouts. He led her through a hidden entrance into what had once been a metro maintenance facility. Now it buzzed with activity as dozens of survivors worked by candlelight and battery-powered lamps. Elena's breath caught. They had captured a Kethvar warrior. The alien hung suspended in an improvised containment field, ironically built from components salvaged from their own technology. It was tall, nearly 8 feet, with a chitinous exoskeleton that gleamed like black metal, 4 arms ending in razor-sharp appendages, compound eyes that seemed to track everything simultaneously, and a mouth filled with what could only be described as grinding mechanisms rather than teeth. "How?" Elena asked, setting down her pack and approaching cautiously. "Fell through a weak section of street during a patrol," explained Carlos, the facility's makeshift leader. "Broke its leg, damaged its armor. We managed to stun it before it could call for backup." Elena had been a xenobiologist before the invasion, one of the few scientists who had actually theorized about hostile alien contact. Now her academic knowledge was desperately needed for something far more practical than research papers. "It's been conscious for 6 hours, Marcus added. "Hasn't said a word, but those eyes never stop moving. It's studying us just like we're studying it." Elena circled the creature slowly, noting the obvious technological integration in its armor. Biomechanical interfaces were fused directly into its carapace, suggesting a species that had evolved alongside their technology, rather than simply developing it. The implications were disturbing. "Has it eaten anything?" she asked. "Refused all food. Water too. Either it doesn't need sustenance frequently, or it's choosing to starve rather than accept anything from us." The compound eyes suddenly focused on Elena with unnerving intensity. When it spoke, its voice was a harmonic blend of clicks and whistles that somehow formed perfect human words. "Studying the livestock, are you, female?" Elena felt a chill but forced herself to step closer. "I'm a scientist. I study all forms of life." "Life?" The alien's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "You understand nothing of life. Your species crawls in the dirt while we span galaxies. You cling to this single world while we command thousands. Then why haven't you wiped us out yet?" Elena challenged, the creature's head tilted in a disturbingly human gesture. "Because termination is wasteful. Your biomass can be repurposed. Your planet's resources are valuable. Your extinction serves no function." Carlos stepped forward, his face red with anger. "We're not biomass, you monster. We're people. We have families, dreams, cultures. You have instincts and chemical reactions you mistake for consciousness, the alien interrupted. All livestock believes itself important. All prey thinks itself the predator until the harvest begins. But Elena caught something in the alien's posture, a subtle tension that suggested its words didn't match its thoughts. If we're just livestock, why hasn't your harvest succeeded? Why are your patrols increasing instead of decreasing? Why are you losing soldiers to mere animals? The Kethvar went silent, but its eyes continued their constant motion. Elena realized it was calculating, analyzing, perhaps even beginning to doubt. We've been monitoring your communications, Marcus said, activating a cobbled-together translation device. Your commanders are frustrated. They expected total pacification within 1 week. It's been 3 weeks and humans keep disappearing from your processing centers. Your supply lines are being disrupted. Your scout teams are vanishing. Temporary setbacks, the alien replied, but its harmonic voice carried a note of uncertainty. Elena smiled coldly. Every day, more humans learn to fight back. Every day, we adapt your technology. Every day, we become more dangerous. She gestured to the containment field holding their prisoner. This force field keeping you trapped? We built it from parts of your own weapons. The translation device letting us communicate? Assembled from your fallen soldiers' equipment. The truth was even more impressive than Elena was letting on. Across the globe, resistance cells were performing miracles of reverse engineering. In the London Underground, former MIT professors were teaching subway workers how to disrupt alien power systems. In the Tokyo sewers, gaming programmers were hacking Kethvar communication networks using modified laptop computers and alien signal amplifiers. Your species possesses unusual adaptability, the alien admitted reluctantly, but adaptability without superior firepower is meaningless. You cannot overcome our technological advantage, can't we? Elena produced a small device from her backpack, a Kethvar energy weapon that had been completely dismantled and rebuilt with human components. This used to be one of your plasma rifles. Now it runs on car batteries and fires 3 times, faster than your original design. The alien's compound, eyes fixed on the weapon with something that looked like fear. Carlos activated a radio transmitter built from scavenged alien components. Static filled the air before voices began emerging. Resistance cells from around the world reporting in. Sydney Resistance confirmed successful raids on 3 processing centers. Stockholm Underground reported disrupting an entire Kethvar supply convoy. São Paulo reported that their captured alien technology had been successfully weaponized. Impossible, the Kethvar whispered. No species develops this rapidly. No livestock learns this quickly. That's because you've never fought humans before, Elena said quietly. We're the species that domesticated wolves, split the atom, and walked on our moon using technology less advanced than a modern calculator. We're the species that turned a children's toy into powered flight and a curiosity about lightning into global electrical networks. She leaned closer to the containment field. You made one mistake, alien. You assumed we were like every other species you've conquered. You thought superior technology guaranteed victory. But humans don't just adapt to challenges, we overcome them. We don't just survive, we thrive. And we don't just fight back, we win. The alien's mandibles clicked rapidly. Whether in fear, anger, or calculation, Elena couldn't tell. But she could see the doubt growing in those compound eyes. For the first time since landing on Earth, a Kethvar was beginning to understand that they might have chosen the wrong planet to invade. Outside, the sound of human voices echoed through the tunnels as more resistance fighters returned from successful raids. The underground was growing stronger every day, and soon it would be time to take the fight back to the surface. The day the invaders learned Earth doesn't fall, it fights back. 2 months into the occupation, engineer James Park crouched in the ruins of Silicon Valley, watching Kethvar patrol drones circle overhead. The aliens had turned the tech capital into a massive processing facility, but they hadn't counted on the creativity of unemployed software developers with too much time and a grudge. Signals locked, whispered Amy Chen, a former Google programmer now hunched over a laptop, connected to a maze of alien components. I'm into their drone network. James couldn't help but grin. The Kethvar used quantum-encrypted communications that should have been impossible to crack with human technology. But they had made one critical error. They assumed humans would try to decrypt their signals rather than simply inject new ones. Uploading the virus now, Amy muttered. her fingers flying across keys jury-rigged to interface with alien hardware. 3 minutes until their patrol pattern goes chaotic. Around them, 24 resistance fighters prepared for the most ambitious operation yet attempted. They weren't just planning to disrupt Kethvar operations, they were going to steal an entire troop transport ship. The plan had grown from desperation and observation. The aliens were methodical creatures following precise patterns and protocols. They never deviated from established procedures, never improvised, never showed individual initiative. It was a strength that had allowed them to conquer dozens of worlds with clockwork efficiency. Against humans, it was becoming a fatal weakness. "Virus is active," Amy announced. "Their drones are now following randomized flight paths based on stock market data from 2008. Should keep them busy for a while." James watched through binoculars as the previously orderly patrol drones began flying in increasingly erratic patterns. Some crashed into buildings, others spun in tight circles, and a few simply landed and shut down completely. The Kethvar ground troops below milled about in confusion, clearly receiving conflicting orders from their now compromised command network. "Phase 2, James called softly into his radio. "New York, you're up." 3,000 miles away, former NASA engineers were implementing the second part of their coordinated strike. Using a combination of stolen alien technology and rebuilt Earth satellites, they began broadcasting false emergency signals throughout the Kethvar communication network. Every alien ship within 1,000 miles would soon believe they were needed urgently elsewhere. The beauty of the plan was its simplicity. Humans had spent decades dealing with computer viruses, system crashes, and network failures. They knew how to make technology misbehave in creative ways. The Kethvar, with their perfect systems and flawless protocols, had no experience with chaos. "Transport incoming," reported Lisa Rodriguez from her sniper position atop a collapsed office building. "Crew of 6, standard configuration." The alien transport ship descended toward the processing center with mechanical precision. It was sleek and deadly, armed with weapons that could level city blocks and protected by energy shields that had proven impervious to conventional weapons. Under normal circumstances, approaching it would be suicide, but these weren't normal circumstances anymore. "Hacking their landing protocols now," Amy announced. "Redirecting them to our prepared site instead of the processing center." James watched in amazement as the transport ship smoothly changed course, following the false navigation signals directly toward the abandoned warehouse where 20 resistance fighters waited in ambush. The pilots would have no idea anything was wrong until it was too late. "Just like redirecting a GPS to the wrong address," Amy muttered with satisfaction. The transport settled onto the warehouse roof with barely a whisper of displaced air. Through his binoculars, James could see the confusion in the alien crew's body language as they realized they weren't at their intended destination. But by then, the trap was already closing. "Now," James whispered into his radio. The warehouse erupted with precisely coordinated chaos. Flashbang grenades built from alien energy cells filled the transport with blinding light. Electromagnetic pulse devices, reverse-engineered from Kethvar stun weapons, disabled the ship's defensive systems. And modified tranquilizer darts loaded with alien sedatives dropped the crew before they could call for help. "Transport secured," came Rodriguez's voice over the radio. "All crew unconscious, ship intact." James felt a surge of fierce pride. 6 months ago, these people had been programmers, engineers, and technicians living ordinary lives. Now they were conducting military operations that would have impressed Special Forces units. "Boston team, you're clear for Phase 3, James announced. In Massachusetts, former MIT robotics students were already implementing the final component of their plan. Using alien manufacturing equipment stolen from processing centers, they had built dozens of decoy ships, crude but effective copies of Kethvar transports that would show up on alien sensors as legitimate vessels. The decoys were already launching from hidden sites across New England, each one broadcasting proper identification codes extracted from captured alien databases, to the Kethvar command network. It would appear that transport ships were spontaneously multiplying and flying random missions across the continent. "Alien response is beautiful chaos," reported the Boston team leader. "Their command is demanding explanations for flight plans they never authorized. Some ships are being ordered to return to base immediately. Others are being told to investigate false emergencies. Their entire logistics network is having a nervous breakdown." James climbed aboard the captured transport, marveling at technology that seemed more grown than built. The organic curves and biomechanical interfaces suggested the Kethvar had evolved alongside their machines to an incredible degree. But evolution, James reflected, could also mean inflexibility. Amy, can you figure out their control systems? The programmer was already studying the alien pilot console with the focused intensity that had made her a senior developer at 25. It's actually not that different from a flight simulator, just way more complicated and kind of gross to touch. She ran her hands over what looked like neural interfaces. I think I can manage basic flight controls. Within hours, they had a captured alien transport under human control and a comprehensive understanding of Kethvar flight systems. More importantly, they had proven that alien technology wasn't magic. It was just very advanced engineering that followed comprehensible principles. James, Amy called from the pilot's position. I'm reading massive confusion in their communication networks. The virus has spread to at least 30 different ships and ground installations. They're requesting guidance from their command ships, but the false emergency signals are overwhelming their ability to process legitimate communications. James looked out through the transport's transparent hull at the Kethvar processing center below. Alien troops were running between buildings, clearly receiving conflicting orders. Some were boarding transports to respond to fake emergencies. Others were trying to restore order to their compromised systems, and still others were simply standing around waiting for coherent commands that would never come. You know what the best part is? James said to his team as they prepared to fly their stolen ship back to the resistant stronghold. They still think we're primitive livestock. They can't comprehend that their technology is being turned against them by the very species they're trying to harvest. Amy engaged the transport's engines, and the ship rose smoothly into the air. Below them, the Kethvar were learning a painful lesson about underestimating human ingenuity. Above them, the stars waited, and for the first time since the invasion began, humans were flying toward them in an alien ship. The war was far from over, but the balance was beginning to shift. The Kethvar had superior technology, but humans had something more valuable: the ability to think outside the box, adapt on the fly, and turn their enemies' strengths into weaknesses. It was time to take the fight to the invaders' home ground. The day the invaders learned Earth doesn't fall, it fights back. Colonel Maria Santos crawled through the ventilation shafts of the former United Nations building, now converted into a Kethvar command center. 4 months of occupation had taught humanity valuable lessons about their enemies, and tonight those lessons would be put to the ultimate test. Radio check, she whispered into her throat mic. The device was a masterpiece of human improvisation. Alien communication technology merged with components from a garage door opener and powered by rechargeable hearing aid batteries. Lima. Team ready, came the response from Lieutenant Thompson. Positioned in the building's basement. Charges set on primary power conduits. Echo team in position, reported Sergeant Williams from the roof. Alien communication array is rigged and ready. Maria smiled grimly. The Kethvar had made their headquarters in the symbolic heart of human diplomacy, probably as a deliberate insult. Tonight, that symbolism would work against them. The plan was ambitious beyond anything the Resistance had attempted. Instead of hit-and-run tactics or technological sabotage, they were going to capture the alien regional command staff alive. The intelligence value would be immense, but more importantly, it would send a message that nowhere was safe from human determination. Remember, Maria broadcast to all teams, these aren't the mindless drones we've been fighting. These are their command structure. They'll be smarter, better equipped, and more dangerous. But they've also been sitting in comfortable headquarters for months while their troops do the actual fighting. They're soft. Through the ventilation grate, Maria could see into the main command chamber. 7 Kethvar officers clustered around a holographic display showing global operations. Their chitinous armor was pristine, unmarked by combat, and their movements had the lazy confidence of creatures who believed themselves untouchable. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Motion sensors are down, Amy Chen reported from her mobile hacking station outside the building. Their security grid now thinks you're authorized maintenance drones. Maria had to admire the elegance of it. Rather than trying to sneak past alien security, they had convinced the security system that they belonged there. The Kethvar trust in their technology was absolute and absolutely exploitable. Deploying nerve agent, whispered Dr. Vasquez from her position in the building's air handling system. The nerve agent was actually a sedative derived from alien biochemistry, synthesized using captured medical supplies and delivered through modified crop dusters. It would be invisible, odorless, and utterly effective against Kethvar physiology. Maria watched as the alien officers continued their strategic discussions, completely unaware that every breath was drawing them closer to unconsciousness. The sedative worked slowly, designed to avoid triggering any automated medical alerts in their armor systems. First target is showing signs of impairment, Thompson reported from his position monitoring through security cameras. Movements becoming sluggish. The beauty of using the aliens' own medical technology against them was that their bodies had no natural resistance. Humans had spent millennia developing immunity to various toxins and diseases. Their immune systems were chaotic, adaptable, and unpredictable. The Kethvar had evolved in sterile environments with perfect medical technology. They had forgotten how to fight biological threats. All targets are down, Maria announced as the last alien officer collapsed over the holographic display. Move in. The assault teams flowed through the building like water, following routes mapped from stolen architectural plans and alien security protocols. Every movement was coordinated, every action timed to the second. It was a precision operation that would have impressed the military units these fighters had once been part of. Command chamber secured, Williams reported as his team zip-tied the unconscious aliens with restraints built from their own equipment. 7 prisoners, all breathing, all alive. But Maria's attention was focused on the holographic display still showing Kethvar operations worldwide. The intelligence they were looking at was staggering. Fleet positions, supply routes, communication protocols, and most importantly, the locations of their home bases in the outer solar system. Amy, are you seeing this? Maria asked, activating the data recording equipment built into her pack. Already downloading everything, came the reply. This is better than Christmas, Easter, and winning the lottery combined. They've got detailed fleet compositions, weapon specifications, supply logistics, even psychological profiles of their command staff. The holographic display showed something that made Maria's blood run cold, then burn with anger. Processing statistics. The Kethvar had already processed over 2 million humans, converting them into what the aliens clinically termed biomass reserves and labor resources. But the display also showed something else, resistance effectiveness ratings. That made Maria smile with fierce pride. Human resistance operations were rated as unprecedented in galactic conquest history. Kethvar casualties were described as statistically impossible for primitive species. Their occupation timeline had been revised 17 times, always extending longer. Colonel? Thompson's voice carried urgent excitement. You need to see this communication log. They're requesting reinforcements from their home fleet. Maria studied the translated text scrolling across her equipment display. The regional commander, now unconscious at her feet, had been filing increasingly desperate reports about human resistance. The latest communication described Earth's defenders as demonstrating tactical capabilities inconsistent with technological development level and exhibiting dangerous psychological adaptability. They're scared, she realized. These aren't conquerors reporting routine pacification progress. These are invaders asking for help against an unexpectedly dangerous enemy. Gets better. Amy's voice carried grim satisfaction. I'm seeing communication intercepts from their home fleet. They're debating whether to send reinforcements or write off Earth as a failed conquest. Apparently, losing this many ships to a primitive species is damaging their reputation with other conquered worlds. The implications hit Maria like a thunderbolt. The Kethvar weren't just facing human resistance. They were facing potential rebellion from other species inspired by humanity's example. Every day that Earth held out, every small victory achieved by human fighters was proof to the galaxy that the Kethvar could be beaten. Download complete, Amy announced. We've got their entire operational database. Time to go, Maria ordered. Lima team, light it up. The basement charges detonated simultaneously, severing the building's connections to the alien power grid and communication networks. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows as the assault teams began their withdrawal, carrying their unconscious prisoners and irreplaceable intelligence data. Echo team, Bring down their communication array, Maria commanded. The roof erupted in sparks and twisted metal as the Kethvar's regional communication hub was methodically destroyed. It would take them days to restore contact with their fleet command, and by then the intelligence gained tonight would have been distributed to resistance cells worldwide. As they slipped away through tunnels that had once carried subway trains, Maria reflected on how much had changed since the invasion began. 4 months ago, humans had been fighting with captured weapons and improvised tactics. Tonight they had conducted a precision intelligence operation that captured enemy command staff and compromised their strategic communications. "Colonel," Williams said as they reached the safety of the underground stronghold. "What do we do with the prisoners?" Maria looked at the 7 unconscious Kethvar officers. Thinking about the 2 million humans who would never see their families again. Justice demanded execution. Strategy demanded interrogation. But humanity demanded something more. "We're going to do something the Kethvar never expected," she said finally. "We're going to show them what it means to be human. We'll keep them alive, treat their injuries and prove that we're better than they are. And then we're going to use everything they know to drive their species off our planet and make sure they never threaten another world again." Above them, alien search teams were discovering their compromised headquarters and beginning to understand the true scope of their failure. The resistance had proven that nowhere was safe, no target too well defended, no enemy too advanced to defeat. The hunters were becoming the hunted, and the Kethvar were beginning to learn what terror felt like. The day the invaders learned Earth doesn't fall. It fights back. Admiral Chen Wei stood in the converted missile silo deep beneath the Colorado mountains, watching dozens of captured Kethvar spacecraft being prepared for the most audacious military operation in human history. 6 months of resistance warfare had taught humanity everything they needed to know about their enemies. Now it was time to take the war to them. "Final systems check on the Aurora," reported Captain Jackson, his voice echoing through the vast underground hangar. The ship had been a Kethvar heavy cruiser before human engineers got their hands on it. Now it was something unprecedented. An alien warship redesigned and upgraded using uniquely human innovations. "Weapons status?" Chen asked, reviewing the tactical displays that showed their entire captured fleet. 23 ships of various sizes, all modified with improvements the original designers never imagined. All plasma cannon systems upgraded with rapid-fire modifications, Lieutenant Rodriguez answered. Average firing rate increased by 300%. Shield generators have been rewired for adaptive frequency shifting. They'll automatically adjust to counter incoming weapons, and the new propulsion systems are testing at 40% faster than Kethvar specifications. Chen smiled with quiet satisfaction. The aliens had designed their technology for efficiency and reliability. Humans had redesigned it for maximum lethality. "Intelligence update from the interrogation teams?" he asked Dr. Vasquez, who had become their chief expert on Kethvar psychology through months of careful questioning of captured officers. "We've confirmed the location of their primary fleet base," she replied, activating a 3-dimensional star chart. "Asteroid belt installation, approximately 200 million kilometers from Earth. Heavily fortified, but designed to repel external attack, not infiltration by ships they believe are friendly." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Using stolen identification codes and modified transponders, the human fleet would approach the alien base while broadcasting proper Kethvar signals. By the time the enemy realized the ships were under human control, it would be too late. "What about their reinforcement fleet?" Chen asked. "Still en route from their nearest major base," Vasquez answered. 3 months minimum before arrival. If we can cripple their local command structure, they'll be operating blind until then." Chen nodded thoughtfully. The Kethvar were discovering that conquering Earth was far more difficult than conquering other worlds. Their usual strategy of overwhelming technological superiority followed by systematic processing had failed completely. Instead, they found themselves fighting an increasingly sophisticated resistance that learned from every engagement. "Sir," Communications Officer Park interrupted urgently, "we're receiving broad-spectrum transmissions from around the globe. All resistance cells are reporting successful completion of their preliminary objectives." Chen turned to the massive display screen showing a real-time map of Earth. Green lights were appearing across every continent as resistance groups confirmed they had eliminated alien ground installations. disrupted supply lines, and captured strategic targets. The coordination was perfect. Thousands of individual operations launched simultaneously to prevent the HFY from responding effectively. London. Reports successful capture of the alien research facility. Park continued reading from incoming messages. Tokyo has eliminated 3 processing centers. Sydney destroyed their regional communication hub. São Paulo captured an entire supply convoy. But the most important light on the display was the one showing the former North American Command Center in New York. Sarah Chen, no relation to Admiral Chen, had led a combined force of resistance fighters in the most crucial mission of all. New York confirms capture of alien orbital communication array, Park announced. All HFY ships in Earth orbit are now under our communication control. Chen felt a surge of fierce pride. The resistance fighters weren't just former soldiers. They were teachers, engineers, programmers, doctors, and ordinary citizens who had refused to accept defeat. Now they were conducting military operations that would challenge professional armies. Phase 2 is authorized, Chen announced. Launch the fleet. The massive hangar doors rumbled open, revealing the star-filled sky above Colorado. One by one, the captured and modified HFY ships rose from their hidden base, their engines glowing with power that now served human purposes. Admiral Chen took his position aboard the flagship Aurora, a ship that represented everything the HFY had underestimated about humanity. They had seen humans as primitive livestock, unable to comprehend advanced technology. Instead, they had encountered a species that could not only understand their equipment, but improve it. All ships report ready, Captain Jackson announced as the fleet formed up in orbit. Stealth systems active, identification codes broadcasting, navigation locked onto target coordinates. Through the Aurora's viewports, Chen could see Earth below, scarred by alien weapons but still defiantly blue and green. The planet had been invaded, occupied, and partially processed, but it had never been conquered. That distinction was about to become clear to the HFY in the most direct way possible. Fleet Command, this is Admiral Chen, he broadcast to all ships. 6 months ago, these aliens made the mistake of thinking humans would surrender like every other species they've encountered. They measured our technology and found it primitive. They analyzed our military capabilities and found them insufficient. What they failed to measure was our refusal to give up. The fleet began moving toward the asteroid belt, their stolen ships invisible to HFY sensors. Each vessel carried crews of former civilians who had learned to operate alien technology through necessity, determination, and the kind of creative problem-solving that had taken humanity from caves to the stars. Admiral, reported Science Officer Martinez from his station, we're detecting the alien base on long-range sensors. Massive installation, possibly home to their entire regional fleet. I'm reading at least 50 major warships and hundreds of support vessels. Chen studied the tactical display showing their target. The HFY base was built into a large asteroid, honeycombed with docks, manufacturing facilities, and command centers. It was a fortress that had probably taken decades to construct and was defended by weapons that could shatter planets. Under normal circumstances, attacking it with 23 ships would be suicide. But these weren't normal circumstances, and these weren't normal ships anymore. Weapons Officer Kim, status on our special modifications? All ships have been equipped with the viral warfare packages, Kim replied with grim satisfaction. The moment we connect to their base network, we'll upload everything our programmers have developed over the past 6 months. Their computer systems will experience what we like to call aggressive creativity. The viral warfare packages were perhaps humanity's most insidious contribution to the conflict. Instead of trying to destroy alien technology, human programmers had learned to make it misbehave in creative and unpredictable ways. Weapons that fired randomly, navigation systems that got lost, communication arrays that broadcast Earth music instead of military orders. Approaching outer sensor range, Navigation Officer Torres announced. Base is hailing us with standard approach protocols. Respond with captured identification codes, Chen ordered. Tell them we're returning from Earth Patrol with priority intelligence updates. The stolen codes worked perfectly. To the HFY base, they appeared to be a returning patrol fleet, with important information about the unexpectedly troublesome human resistance. The alien traffic controllers directed them to standard docking procedures without suspicion. Admiral, Martinez said quietly, I'm reading their full defensive grid now. Energy shields, plasma cannon batteries, fighter squadrons on standby. If they realize we're hostile before we dock, they can vaporize us in seconds. Then we'd better make sure they don't realize it, Chen replied calmly. As they approached the asteroid base, Chen marveled at the sheer scale of Kethvar engineering. The installation was larger than most Earth cities, with enough firepower to conquer solar systems. But all that power was useless if it couldn't distinguish friend from foe. Base is directing us to Docking Bay 7, communications reported. Standard post-patrol processing. They want our mission reports and captured intelligence. Tell them we have extensive human behavioral data and captured resistance leadership, Chen ordered with a cold smile. That should get their attention. The lie worked perfectly. The base controllers expedited their docking clearance, eager to examine intelligence that might finally explain why Earth's conquest was proceeding so slowly. They had no idea they were about to receive a very different kind of education about human capabilities. Docking clamps engaged, Torres announced, as the Aurora settled into the alien station. We're connected to their base systems. Amy, you're up, Chen said to the programmer who had become their most valuable tactical asset. Uploading viral packages now, Amy Chen replied from her jury-rigged hacking station. Their network security is exactly as arrogant as we expected. They're not even scanning for intrusion software because they can't imagine anyone being clever enough to hack their systems. Within minutes, the Kethvar base began experiencing unprecedented technical difficulties. Lights flickered in patterns that spelled out human curse words in binary code. Gravity generators fluctuated randomly, causing alien personnel to float helplessly through corridors. Communication systems began broadcasting Earth's greatest hits instead of military orders. Base command is in complete chaos, Kim reported, monitoring alien communications. They think they're experiencing multiple simultaneous system failures. Their technical teams are running around trying to restore order. Perfect, Chen said. All ships commence Operation Homecoming. The human fleet erupted from their docking bays like fury made manifest. Instead of trying to fight their way out of the base, they were fighting their way deeper in, targeting command centers, communication arrays, and the massive shipyards where new Kethvar vessels were constructed. Target their central command, Chen ordered. If we can capture their fleet coordination systems, we can turn their own ships against each other. The Aurora's modified weapon systems opened fire on alien defensive positions with devastating effect. Human engineering had increased their firepower dramatically, but more importantly, it had made their weapons unpredictable. The Kethvar defensive algorithms designed to counter their own technology were useless against weapons that had been completely redesigned. Admiral, Martinez called out excitedly. Their main fleet is launching to defend the base, but their navigation systems are compromised. Half their ships are flying in circles. The other half are attacking empty space because their targeting computers think they see enemies that aren't there. Chen watched the tactical display with amazement as 50 Kethvar warships, each individually more powerful than anything in the human fleet, became victims of their own compromised technology. Their perfect coordination had become perfect chaos. Signal all Earth resistance cells, Chen commanded. Tell them the asteroid base is under human control. Tell them their planet's children have reached the stars and we're coming home with presents. The battle for the Kethvar base raged for hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. Superior technology meant nothing when that technology turned against its creators. By the time the last alien defender surrendered, humanity had captured the largest military installation in the solar system and gained access to star maps, showing the locations of every Kethvar base within 50 light-years. As Admiral Boilay, Chen stood in the conquered alien command center, looking out at captured warships and liberated human prisoners. He reflected on how much had changed since the invasion began. The Kethvar had come to Earth expecting to harvest a primitive species. Instead, they had awakened something far more dangerous. Human ingenuity unleashed and pointed at the stars. The day the invaders learned Earth doesn't fall, it fights back. General Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the captured Kethvar dreadnought Vengeance, renamed from whatever unpronounceable alien designation it had carried before. 8 months after the invasion began, humanity controlled the most powerful warship in the solar system and was preparing to end the occupation once and for all. Status report from all fronts, she commanded. reviewing the holographic displays that now showed human forces across multiple star systems. Earth Liberation Forces report 97% success. Colonel Santos replied from her position at the tactical station. Last 3 processing centers have been eliminated. All major population centers are back under human control. Remaining Kethavar ground forces are requesting permission to surrender. Sarah allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The species that had arrived expecting to harvest humanity like livestock was now begging for mercy from the very prey they had tried to process. "What about their reinforcement fleet?" she asked. "Admiral Chen's long-range reconnaissance reports they've turned back," came the response from communications. Apparently losing their regional command, base and most of their invasion fleet convinced them that Earth isn't worth the cost. The irony wasn't lost on Sarah. The Kethavar had retreated not because humanity had superior technology, though they were rapidly developing, but because humans had proven too expensive to conquer. Every victory cost the aliens more ships, more personnel, and more reputation than they could afford. "Message coming in from the prisoner interrogation teams," reported Lieutenant Rodriguez. "The captured Kethavar officers are requesting to speak with our command staff. They claim to have important information about other species the Kethavar are planning to invade." Sarah considered this carefully. Over the months of occupation and resistance, humanity had learned disturbing truths about their invaders. The Kethavar weren't just conquering Earth. They were systematically harvesting dozens of species across the galaxy, processing entire civilizations like some cosmic slaughterhouse. "Put them through," Sarah decided. The main display activated, showing the lead Kethavar prisoner in his containment cell. The alien looked haggard, his chitinous armor dulled and cracked. His compound eyes held something Sarah had never seen in a Kethavar before: fear. "General Chen," the alien spoke in perfectly translated English. "I am Commander Zefak of the Kethavar Regional Fleet. I request formal negotiations." "You're in no position to request anything," Sarah replied coldly. "You invaded our world, murdered our people, and tried to process us like cattle. Give me one reason why I shouldn't space you and your entire crew." "Because your species has achieved something unprecedented," Zefak said urgently. "In 3,000 years of galactic expansion, no species has ever successfully resisted Kethavar conquest. Your example is already inspiring rebellions on 17 worlds. Our empire is fracturing." Sarah felt a chill of surprise mixed with fierce pride. Humanity's resistance hadn't just saved Earth, it was liberating the galaxy. "Continue," she said. "The Kethavar Empire controls over 200 species," Zefak explained. "We have ruled through technological superiority and the belief that resistance is futile. But you have proven that superior technology can be overcome by superior determination. Slave worlds that have accepted their fate for centuries are now rising in revolt." "Good," Sarah said flatly. "Maybe they'll do to you what you tried to do to them." "You don't understand," Zefak pleaded. "Without Kethavar administration, those worlds will descend into chaos. Billions will die in civil wars and resource conflicts. The galactic economy will collapse." Sarah studied the alien commander for a long moment, recognizing the desperation in his voice. The Kethavar had built their empire on the assumption that they were indispensable, that conquered species couldn't survive without their management. Now that assumption was crumbling. "What exactly are you proposing?" she asked. "A treaty," Zefak said. "Complete withdrawal from Earth and recognition of human sovereignty. In exchange, your species helps us manage the transition on other worlds, prevent the chaos that will follow our retreat." "Absolutely not," Sarah replied immediately. "We're not going to help you maintain your empire just because your slaves are getting uppity. Then you condemn billions to death." "No," Sarah said firmly. "You condemned them when you enslaved them in the first place. Their freedom isn't our responsibility to manage, it's their right to claim." But even as she spoke, Sarah was thinking about the broader implications. Humanity had proven that the Kethavar could be beaten, but what happened next? A galaxy full of newly liberated species with no experience governing themselves could indeed descend into chaos. "There is another option," she said. Slowly, Zefak's compound eyes focused on her with desperate hope. "Complete, unconditional surrender," Sarah continued. "All Kethavar forces withdraw from every conquered world immediately. All processed populations are returned to their homeworlds. All stolen technology and resources are returned to their original owners. Impossible, Zefek protested. The Empire would never— The Empire is already finished, Sarah interrupted. You said it yourself, rebellions on 17 worlds and growing. You can surrender now and maybe salvage something from the wreckage, or you can fight and lose everything. And in exchange? Sarah smiled coldly. Humanity doesn't hunt down every last Kethvar in the galaxy. We're not interested in genocide, we're interested in justice. Withdraw peacefully, and you can try to build a civilization based on cooperation instead of conquest. But what about the chaos on liberated worlds? That's not our problem to solve, Sarah said. But it's not yours either anymore. Those species will figure out their own futures just like we did. Some will ask for human assistance, Rodriguez observed from his station. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. And we'll consider helping those who ask politely. But we're not going to impose human rule any more than we're going to help maintain Kethvar rule. Freedom means the right to succeed or fail on your own terms. She turned back to the alien commander. You have 24 hours to transmit our terms to whatever's left of your empire. Complete withdrawal or total war. And commander, if you choose war, remember that you're fighting the species that turned your own technology against you. Imagine what we can do with an entire galaxy's worth of liberated allies. Zefek's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of severe distress. I will convey your terms, Moans, he said finally. As the communication ended, Sarah looked around the bridge of the captured dreadnought at her crew of former resistance fighters. Teachers, engineers, programmers, and ordinary citizens who had become the most effective military force in known space. Think they'll accept? Santos asked. Does it matter? Sarah replied. We've already won. The Kethvar Empire is finished whether they admit it or not. The only question is whether they're smart enough to cut their losses. And if other species ask for our help rebuilding their worlds? Sarah considered this carefully. Humanity had spent months learning to fight an alien invasion. Now they might need to learn something even more challenging. How to help rebuild a galaxy without becoming conquerors themselves. We help them the same way we helped ourselves, she said finally. We share what we know, support what they choose to build, and never forget that freedom can't be imposed from the outside. It has to be claimed from within. Through the bridge windows, Earth hung in space like a blue and green jewel, scarred but unbroken, invaded but never conquered. It was a symbol of something the galaxy had forgotten, that some things were worth fighting for no matter the odds. The Kethvar had come expecting to harvest humanity. Instead, they had taught them to reach for the stars. The students were about to become the teachers, and the galaxy would never be the same. The day the invaders learned Earth doesn't fall, it fights back. President Elena Vasquez stood in the restored United Nations General Assembly, addressing representatives from 47 liberated worlds. 1 year after the Kethvar invasion began, Earth had become the center of the largest peaceful revolution in galactic history. The Kethvar surrender was transmitted to all remaining Imperial outposts this morning, she announced. To the assembled delegates, their 3,000-year empire has officially ceased to exist. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of sounds. Applause, cheering, chittering, harmonic humming, and vocalizations from species humanity was still learning to understand. Representatives from worlds that had been enslaved for centuries were celebrating their first taste of freedom in living memory. The final Kethvar evacuation transports departed Earth orbit 6 hours ago, Elena continued. After 1 year of occupation, our world is completely free. Dr. Amy Chen, now Earth's Director of Interspecies Technology Exchange, activated the massive holographic display showing the galaxy. Red indicators that had once marked Kethvar-controlled systems were rapidly turning green as liberation movements succeeded across hundreds of worlds. The domino effect has exceeded all projections, Amy reported. 93% of former Kethvar territories have declared independence. 17 species have established new democratic governments. 26 worlds have requested technical assistance in rebuilding their infrastructure. Elena smiled as she watched the galactic map transform in real time. What had begun as humanity's desperate struggle for survival had become something unprecedented. Peaceful transfer of power spanning thousands of star systems. Ambassador Zethkar of the Vraxian Republic has a statement, Elena announced, a tall, crystalline being stepped forward to the speaking platform. The Vraxians had been among the first species conquered by the Kethvar, their world strip-mined for rare minerals for over 2 millennia. Now they were free to rebuild their civilization. The Vraxian people wish to express our gratitude to humanity. Zethkar spoke through a translation device originally built from Kethvar technology. Your example taught us that freedom is not granted by conquerors, it is claimed by the unconquered. How are the former Kethvar territories adapting to self-governance? Asked Representative Cathara from the Centauri Collective, another recently liberated species. Better than expected, replied Colonel Santos, now Director of Galactic Security Coordination. Some worlds experienced initial unrest, but most populations remembered their pre-conquest governmental systems. The Kethvar were efficient conquerors, but they never successfully erased cultural memories. Elena reflected on how much had changed since that terrifying morning when alien ships first darkened Earth's skies. Humanity had not only survived an invasion by a technologically superior species, they had turned the entire galactic order upside down. What about Kethvar refugees requesting asylum? Asked another delegate. We've established processing centers on 3 neutral worlds, Elena replied. Any Kethvar who renounces the imperial conquest model and agrees to rehabilitation is being given an opportunity to integrate into free society. Surprisingly, about 30% of their population is taking this option. It was one of the most remarkable discoveries of the post-war period. Many Kethvar had been as trapped by their empire's rigid hierarchy as the species they conquered. Given a choice, thousands were abandoning their homeworlds to start new lives in the liberated territories. Director Chen, Elena said, please update the assembly on our technology sharing initiative. Amy activated new displays showing collaborative research projects spanning dozens of worlds. The former Kethvar Empire left behind an enormous technological infrastructure. Rather than allowing any single species to claim it, we've established joint research councils where all interested worlds can participate in studying and improving these technologies. The medical advances alone have been extraordinary, added Dr. Rodriguez, now head of the Interspecies Health Consortium. Combining human adaptability with Vraxian crystalline computing and Altarian biological engineering, we've developed treatments for diseases that have plagued the galaxy for millennia. Elena looked around the assembly hall, marveling at the diversity of species now working together as equals. The Kethvar had conquered through division and fear. Humanity was building something new through cooperation and shared knowledge. Representative Thompson, Elena called to the human delegate from the African Federation. Status report on the Earth reconstruction? All major cities have been rebuilt and improved beyond pre-invasion standards, Thompson reported proudly. The processing centers have been converted into memorial parks and educational facilities. More importantly, every human survivor has been accounted for and offered full medical and psychological support. And the memorial project? Thompson's expression grew solemn. The global memorial to the processed will be completed next month. It will honor the 2 million humans lost during the occupation, as well as the billions of beings from other worlds who were processed over the centuries of Kethvar rule. The chamber fell silent for a moment, remembering the cost of freedom. The Kethvar invasion had been defeated, but the scars would take generations to heal. President Vasquez, said Ambassador Zethkar, the Vraxian Republic wishes to propose a formal alliance structure for the liberated worlds. Elena had been expecting this. With the Kethvar Empire gone, the galaxy needed new forms of organization, but not new forms of domination. The proposed Galactic Liberation Alliance would be based on voluntary cooperation, Zethkar continued. No world would be compelled to join, no species would dominate others, and all decisions would require consensus among participating members. Earth supports this proposal in principle, Elena replied, but with one critical addition, a permanent charter stating that any world may withdraw from the alliance at any time for any reason, without penalty. Murmurs of approval rippled through the assembly. After centuries of enforced unity under Kethvar rule, the liberated species were determined never again to sacrifice freedom for security. There's something else, Amy announced, her voice carrying excitement. Our deep space monitoring arrays have detected something extraordinary. We're receiving messages from beyond former Kethvar territory, other species who heard about our resistance and want to establish contact. Elena felt a thrill of anticipation mixed with responsibility. Earth's example hadn't just liberated the Kethavar Empire. It had announced to the galaxy that freedom was possible. The technological superiority didn't guarantee permanent dominance. How many species? Elena asked. At least 200 confirmed civilizations have transmitted friendship messages, Amy replied. Some are offering trade agreements, others are requesting assistance with their own oppressive governments, and several want to share their own stories of successful resistance against various empires. The implications were staggering. Humanity had stumbled into becoming the symbol of galactic liberation, not through conquest but through example. Mr. President, said Captain Jackson, still serving as military advisor despite his promotion to admiral, there's one more item. The former Kethavar High Command has transmitted a final message. Elena nodded for him to proceed. They want to surrender their historical archives, complete records of every species they conquered, every technology they stole, every world they devastated. They're calling it restitution for crimes against galactic civilization. Elena closed her eyes briefly, thinking about the magnitude of what they were offering. 3,000 years of stolen history, lost knowledge, and suppressed cultures could be returned to their rightful inheritors. We accept their archives, she announced, and we'll make sure every piece of stolen heritage finds its way home. As the assembly session concluded and delegates began discussing specific cooperation agreements, Elena stepped outside onto the building's observation deck. Above her, the night sky was filled with ships from dozens of worlds, former enemies working together, former slaves helping to rebuild galactic civilization. A year ago, humanity had been alone in the universe, convinced they were the only intelligent life in existence. Now Earth was the capital of the most diverse alliance in galactic history, and humans were among the youngest species in a community that spanned thousands of worlds. The Kethavar had come to Earth expecting to harvest a primitive species. Instead, they had awakened something that would reshape the galaxy forever. The simple, revolutionary idea that no one had the right to enslave anyone else, and that freedom was worth fighting for regardless of the odds. As Elena watched ships from liberated worlds preparing for their journeys home, she smiled at the thought of how the Kethavar invasion would be remembered by history. They had intended to write the final chapter of human civilization. Instead, they had authored the first chapter of galactic freedom. Earth didn't fall. It fought back, and the galaxy would never be the same.